So welcome again, everyone, to Advanced Library Research for Psychology students. This is what we are going to cover tonight. We are going to do a quick, very brief refresher of database searching basics that we cover primarily in our intro to library research webinar that we held last week. But since so much of our other information that we're going to talk about depends on knowing the basics of database searching, we're going to cover that, like I said, briefly to begin with. Then we're going to spend much more of our time searching other types of information. So how do you get that background information that's really helpful outside of peer-reviewed research? How do you research theories and methodology? And how do you search dissertations? Then we're going to spend some brief time on searching Google Scholar and staying organized. We have a webinar dedicated specifically to Google Scholar that is much more helpful if that is what you are if you're going to be using Google Scholar quite a bit. So we're just going to cover the basics tonight. And then, of course, staying organized. And then lastly, I want to spend a little bit more time at the end on where to find help. So if you want to learn some more about what we talk about tonight, or if you want to learn where you can ask questions, we'll cover that and wrap up with that at the end. So we are going to start with database searching and what that looks like in the Walden Library. So as a refresher, there are two main points of entry really that you can search in the library database. There is that top search box that we call Thoreau, and that searches the whole library for the most part. Then there is the research by subject button that is where you can go to search psychology specific databases. So let's jump over to the library and look at that briefly. So this is the library homepage. Like I said, this top search box searches Thoreau. And if you want that traditional 3 search boxes, because that helps you set up a search, you can always click on the advanced search button underneath it. When you do that, it gives you the traditional 3 search boxes, and you can tell here at the top that you're searching Thoreau because it has that information above the top search box. So what does Thoreau search? Well, it searches everything here in research by subject. All of our resources are organized by type of resource, right? Like journal articles or videos or books. And they're also organized by subject. So you can see these are all the program areas here in Walden. And of course, psychology is listed here as well. So when you click on the psychology option, you'll see that not only psychology, but all of our other subject research pages are organized very similarly. I don't really recommend using this top search box. It's not always clear to students what it is that you're searching. So my recommendation is always to choose Thoreau if you decide that searching the whole library is going to be beneficial for what you're doing, or searching subject-specific databases to have a much more comprehensive and subject-specific search. So this is where we find psych info. So let's look at how we search databases. So if you were to break down all of the steps in database searching, it essentially comes down to 5 steps, which can really be distilled into 3 steps, which is essentially try a search, review your results, and then modify that search if you're not getting relevant results. So within those steps are the 8 that you see listed here. So let's work through a search briefly to see how we would work through those steps 1 through 8. So let's assume that you have a prompt from one of your courses either an assignment or discussion, or possibly even this is maybe a capstone or dissertation topic that you're interested in. Choose a current topic in psychology and discuss its effects on a specific population. What programs are being used to address this issue? Use the scholarly literature to support your response. So let's hop over to the library databases, and we are going to work through this search steps 1 through 8. So again, when choosing to search, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to search Thoreau or you want to search a subject-specific database. Now, for coursework, it's always great to start in a subject-specific database because you have limited time to work on your assignments and discussions. Most of our students are typically working adults, and so you want to just delve right into the database that is most likely to have the information that's going to meet your research need. There's reasons why you want to use Thoreau. Some of those reasons may be if you're trying to search, um, you're not sure what database to search. You want to see maybe sort of more broadly what's out there overall on your topic. So those are some reasons why you would want to search one versus the other. And honestly, if you start with Thoreau and you get thousands of results and you want to focus it on psychology or education, you can always try that same search in one of the um, subject-specific databases. So let's assume that for this prompt, it's for coursework and we want to look in psych info. So we're going to go ahead and go to psychology, and we are going to choose a database. So in this case, we're going to choose psych info because that's the main psychology database. And we want to answer this prompt based on the psychology literature. We might want to go into criminal justice. We might want to go into education. Those are all options as well. So remember that it is one idea or concept per search box. So we are going to put drug use. That is the topic that we chose, and the population is high school students. Now we are going to put high school students in quotation marks, so we don't get a search that is finding students in one section, high school in another. We really want that concept, that exact concept, high school students. Now, remember that step 4 is we can combine similar ideas into one search box. Well, there's all these other ways that you can say drug use, substance abuse, or drug addiction. Let's see, I don't know why that erased everything. Let's see. Okay, I've somehow just erased everything, so I'm going to go ahead and put that back in. So I'm going to put all those terms that we can think of for drug use in this search box. So it gives the database the option of finding any of these terms and the exact phrase of high school students. Now for courses, we're going to click full text and uncheck it for capstone or dissertation because we can always get you the full text at another point. And then we're going to click peer review. We're not going to limit to date just yet. We'll do that. We can always do that on the results page. So we're going to click search. And you can see we have quite a few results. We have 1,100 results right here. So what does this search mean and where is the database searching for these terms? Well, it is saying find any of these terms, and it also has to find high school students as an exact phrase. Now, this drop-down menu on the left rarely has to be changed, so I don't spend much time going over that. Just remember that OR goes inside the search boxes because that's going to give the database all those options to look for. So it is going to search in the article title, the publication information, the subjects, which are the main ideas that are assigned to each article when they're entered into a database, and the article abstract, which you can get to when you click on the article title. So now let's assume that we want to find the full text. that we found the full text maybe in the first page or two without modifying our search at all. Full text PDF is pretty self-explanatory. Find at Walden simply means the article lives in another database, and when you click on it, it will either bring you to the other article or a database that you can select that actually has the article. So in this case, these 5 databases have this article in full text, so clicking on them should bring you to the full text, no matter which one you choose. So that would actually be all of the steps 1 through 8, but I want to talk about how can we go through and modify this search if we want to get it down to a couple hundred results, which is really a good, well-structured search. 1,000 is really too many to be browsing. So when I review my list, I can look at the subjects line, and I want to see if I can narrow drug use at all. So I'm going to look at some of the other concepts that have been labeled for each of these articles. Prevention, self-efficacy, let's see, tobacco smoking. So now we're getting into more specific drug usage. I was seeing earlier in this search a lot of results for prescription drugs. So let's go ahead and try and narrow our search to drug use of prescription drugs. So we're going to go ahead and search this, but I want only articles whose main idea is prescription drugs. So only articles who were labeled prescription drugs. So I'm going to go in this right-hand side, and I'm going to tell the database to search for it in that subject line. But remember, you can also search for it in places like the title, the abstract, but in this case, I'm going to tell the database to search for it in subjects. Okay, so now I'm down to 39 results. Now, if for some reason we didn't get enough relevant results possibly that we needed for our assignment, we could again broaden this search and include, not only will we take results for high school students, but we'll also take results for teens or adolescents. Now, the reason why I put the asterisk there is that will search the root word of teen. So wherever the word starts changing is where you put the asterisk. So this will search for teen, teenager, teenage, and it will search for adolescent with a T and adolescence with a C. So that's all the forms of the word adolescent. So I'm going to update my search again. And now I'm back up to 573. Well, if you remember, the prompt asked for programs, what programs are being used to address this issue? So if I wanted to add in another search box, I can click this plus button and add in program or possibly prevention or intervention, because all of those will be associated with some kind of program, like treatment has to involve something, and so would an intervention. So we're going to click search. And now we're down to 381. So that's a good result number there. Now, if for some reason in our coursework we needed to limit by date, we could come over to the blue column on the left, which are all the limiters that we saw on the home page, and we can type in 2015, and we'll get all articles since 2015 that were published. So 143 results, and we still need to review the results and make sure that these are relevant. And if they're not, we need to go back up to the search and review those as well. So that is how we do a basic search with all of the advanced search techniques thrown in there. So we have quotation marks, we have asterisks, we have field searching, which is when we told the database to search for prescription drugs in the subjects line. So we covered all of those advanced search techniques. Now, one thing that we didn't cover in database searching that is really very helpful, especially when you're involved in a larger project or your capstone or dissertation research, is the thesaurus. And that is a great brainstorming tool. Now, what the thesaurus is it's simply a list of synonyms and related concepts for a term that you're using, but they're all associated with that subject line. So, for instance, in this search, all of these subject terms are in the thesaurus, and it's going to give you synonyms and related concepts. So, for example, let's do it from here. I can always go back to the search. So the thesaurus is typically at the top of the search page. And when I click on here, resilience is actually a great term to use. I'm going to click on term contains. So we're going to be searching in this search box because this is the thesaurus. So I'm going to click search, and resilience is in the thesaurus. So it's an official term used by the database, which uses American Psychological Association psychology terms. And this is what the thesaurus is. It obviously gives you the word as the entry. Sometimes it will tell you the year introduced, it will give you a definition, but then it gives you broader and related terms and also older terms that were used. So if you're thinking back to one of your classes where you learned about resilience, you're like, I know that there's other terms related to this, but I just can't think of them. You can always try the database thesaurus because you might not have thought about searching post-traumatic growth or cognitive reserve or psychological endurance. And then, of course, in the older literature, this term used to be referred to as hardiness. So the thesaurus can be a really great advanced search technique to use when you are working on more in-depth projects and research. So that is the thesaurus. So this is sort of the review that I talked about on the overview slide. So is there any questions about how you search these databases or how you break up a database search? Okay, so we're going to move on to other types of library resources. So some of this information may be new to you, and it's really helpful, again, when you're doing advanced library research, where you're not simply looking for just one or two peer-reviewed journal articles. So one of the great things that we have in the library are encyclopedias and handbooks and books. So just like a traditional library, we have all that information, but of course it's academically oriented. So it's not your World Book Encyclopedia, and it's not the same books, the majority of them, that you'd find in a Barnes and Noble. They're all for academic researchers or people who want to really delve into a topic. And so what's great about these two sources is they help you understand the peer-reviewed articles that you're going to read. Because remember, peer review is only one research study. Typically, there's other types of peer-reviewed articles, but it's typically one research study that focuses on very specific variables like drug use and prevention in high school students. Maybe they researched a very specific aspect of that. So how do we get a broader view or broader understanding of the research associated with drug use and prevention? Well, we use scholarly handbooks, encyclopedias, and books. So how do we search for those? So we are going to go ahead and keep this search open because we will use this a little later on. Okay, so most everything else that you're going to need that's not journal articles, you are going to find in this publications button over here on the right. So when I click here, you'll see all the other things that we're going to be talking about tonight. And the last one here on the list is encyclopedias, handbooks, and dictionaries. Our main encyclopedia database is called Sage Knowledge, and I find it's best used, although you can do an advanced search, is to just look up one concept or variable at a time. So for instance, if we're interested in drug use and we want more of a background in this and a broader understanding, we can simply type in drug use and see what examples come up. So for instance, if we scroll through, something that pops out to me is the sociology of drug use, which is a chapter in 21st century sociology. So this is a handbook, and handbooks are great because they're organized by chapter, and unlike an encyclopedia that is organized alphabetically by entry. So when I click on this chapter, the sociology of drug use, we're going to see the type of information that you're likely to find in our handbooks or encyclopedias. Now, I don't know if you can clearly see on your end, but my scroll bar is all the way over here to the right, and you can see I can scroll down quite a bit. So this article is probably about 10 pages long. So again, it's not your World Book entry. So it kind of starts with an overview. And we're going to move on to researching theory and methodology. But what's interesting about encyclopedias and handbooks is that when you look up a concept, it often will talk about theory and methodology. So here are some early researchers in this area. So this is going way back in some historical context. So these are some researchers in this area. If we keep scrolling down, we're going to see implications of early research, so that's interesting. But now we're getting into theories of drug use. Now, we could have searched drug use theory as well. We could have searched for a specific theory. So for instance, they're talking about social control. I could have entered into the encyclopedia social control theory. I could have looked up social self-control theory, social learning theory. So this is just kind of orienting you to research, more broader research, a bigger overview of your topic. Conflict theory. So these are all theories that might be interesting to you that you might want to research further. So that is how we use encyclopedias and handbooks. Now, books work very similar. So if we click on the book section, and like anything on our website that has one search box, typically underneath it is advanced search. So if you click advanced search, it's going to give you those three search boxes. So let's try a similar search to our topic that we were searching earlier. So let's use our drug use, but let's not focus on high school students. We're just going to focus on teens or adolescents. And in this case, we're going to look more closely at prevention. So one idea or concept per search box, similar ideas in one search box separated by or. So we have 534 books and book chapters that talk about this. And so again, you'll need to look at the title and the publication information to determine if it's a book or if it's a book chapter. So we see some titles, substance abuse and counseling. This is really interesting. Parenting and teen drug use, the most recent findings from research, prevention and treatment. So this might have some chapters that are really applicable to your research that will give you some good broad insight into your topic. So basically a book search works the same as our journal searches, and the interface looks very similar as well. All right, let's talk a little bit more about theory and include methodology in that list as well. So we talked about theories that you can look for those in encyclopedias or handbooks. Well, we have, if you go back down to the encyclopedias and handbooks button, we have a database specific to methodology called Sage Research Methods Online. So if you click on this, you can search all kinds of information about methodology. So if you're interested in a specific methodology like case study, again, you can search that term. And it's taking a little bit. It only takes a little bit when I'm presenting a webinar. When I'm doing my own research or helping students, it always is super quick. So you'll see encyclopedia of case study research, doing a case study. And if you scroll down, you'll see all kinds of entries. So before you go out and purchase any types of books related to the methodology that you're interested in, you should always start with the library and see what we have available. This is specific to counseling and psychotherapy. So this might be exactly what you need for case studies. You can search phenomenology, you can search any kind of qualitative measures. You can also search more broadly, like qualitative. So you can see what handbooks and encyclopedias we have on qualitative research if you're not sure specifically what methodology you might want to apply. So again, we're searching for broad topics on qualitative research. And you can see here the Sage Encyclopedia of Qualitative Research Methods, qualitative research in psychology. This looks like a different publication of a similar title, or actually it might be just a different edition if I look closer at it. So there's all kinds of information on qualitative as well as quantitative methodologies as well. And again, you can search specifically the methodology or you can search more broadly for ideas as well. So mixed methods in social and behavioral research, a lot of mixed methods, quantitative data for business and management, and then it just has more information as well. But you can look up specific aspects. What's great about our quantitative sources is that you can look up, use the encyclopedias for definitions and things like that that you're reading about for that particular methodology that you're not familiar with. So you can get quick definitions as well. So how else can we search for methodology and theory? Well, I left this search up and I am going to take out this term because I want to have more results to search for. Okay, so this is quite a bit. So 3,100, maybe I should have kept prescription drugs in there, but either way, you can also look up theory and methodology in journal articles as well. Now, typically any journal article is going to talk on this topic is going to talk about a theory, but a little trick you can do is type in theory or theories. Now, again, we could have used the asterisk to search the root word, but I'm just going to type in both for right now. And it will search for articles that are focused more on theory or theories because these words are going to be mentioned in the article title, publication information, subjects, or abstract. And when you search, you can often tell just by searching in the subject line, it will start listing theories. Now this one, the journal article has the word theory in it. But if I scroll down, let's look at the second one in the abstract and see what theory it's talking about, if any. Because again, we're going to have to review them. So this is talking about resilience theory. So you could just take a quick browse through here to kind of get educated on what And of course, we still are limited to 2015. We could limit to the last 3 years. What are some common theories being used? If we look in the subject line, sometimes we'll start seeing the actual theory listed. So here, item response theory. So this is a really great way to kind of get a quick overview of some theories you might want to start looking into that might apply to your research. You can also do the same thing with methodology. So if I want to see what case studies have been done, and in this case, I'm going to put an asterisk for study or studies, I want to see what else has been done in this area. So I am going to click search. And I have 77 results where they are mentioning a case study or the actual article was a case study. And if we look in a result, oh, let's see where we're seeing the term case study. So this case study explored injury-related experiences. So that's another way you can look for methodology as well. So remember, encyclopedias or handbooks, or you can actually use the journal articles to see that information as well. So lastly, before I ask if there's any questions, so think through all this and see if kind of you have any questions about any of the topics. The last thing that we are going to talk about is dissertations. So again, that's an additional resource. So we have 2 dissertation databases. So let's talk about why you might use one over the other. Well, our first one are just completed Walden dissertations. These are great to see what a completed dissertation looks like. So you can look at their literature review, their research problem. You can also look up dissertations by chair. So if you're assigned a chair for dissertation, you can see the quality of dissertation, the type of dissertation that your chair has sat on. And you can also use Walden dissertations to kind of citation mine their articles that they use, especially if you find something closely related to your topic. And you can do that especially well in all dissertations from all universities. You can look at their literature reviews and citations and mine those as well. So you're probably not going to be surprised that once we click on the dissertation database, the search would get set up exactly the same as it would in our other databases. So one idea or concept per search box. And we're going to go ahead and click search. Now I just want to point out that in ProQuest databases, so we know this is a ProQuest database, they search not only in the article title, pub, subjects, or abstract, they'll search in the entire article text. So if we get thousands of results, we're probably going to want to pick our most important terms and select anywhere except full text, and that will quickly narrow our results. So if that happens, we're going to go back and modify our search. So yeah, 3,429 results, that's quite a bit. So it's because it's looking in the article text as well, which they might only be mentioning teen and all of these concepts for some other reason. So my most important concepts, I would say, is probably, let's see, well, possibly all of them. I mean, there's not really one I can do without. So let's see what happens when we select anywhere except full text on all of these. Okay, great, we have 15 results. And then we can limit to the most current ones. So 2013, I see, 2016. So if we wanted to see something more recent, we can limit by date as well, just like in all of our other databases. So that is basically how you can search our dissertation databases. So we talked about theories and methodology and links to more information and examples of how to do that. So before we move on to searching Google Scholar, is there any questions about any of the content that we just covered? Okay, let's talk about a Google Scholar. Now, often, most of our students that take our advanced library research webinars are our master's and doctoral level students. And even if you're not a master's or doctoral level student, I would encourage you to use your time at Walden to learn how to use their library databases. Even if you're an undergraduate and you think at some point you want to continue on to a graduate degree, because really, when you think about an electrician or a construction worker and you think about the tools that they have that help them do their jobs, some are just better than other. They rely on some primarily and some as sort of secondary tools. Well, your library database is really your primary tool as an academic. I am not going to lie, there is some learning curve and practice to using and being proficient at database searching. But like anything else that's important, there takes some time to learn it, right? So you didn't know about theory and methodology per se until you started researching it. And they're both difficult things to do. Well, sometimes database searching for depending on your comfort with technology can be a little difficult. They are set up for the purposes that researchers need. And Google Scholar, not so much. So Google Scholar does have pros, right? It does have benefits. It searches very broadly. But often I find it more helpful to use it in very specific situations. For instance, if I'm not finding something in the library database, Google Scholar is a good check to see is there just not much out there in the literature. It also does something called citation chaining that we are going to talk about here on the next slide. What it doesn't do is can be so limiting that it's really good to know these things before you start searching. It doesn't limit to peer review. So anything that you find in Google Scholar, once you sort through the books and conference papers, which we know are not peer reviewed, we have to verify that the journal the article was published in was peer reviewed. And we have to do that in a database called Ulrichs. It also doesn't limit to full text. So the two ways that you can at least access from Google Scholar the library's content is to use our pre-configured Google Scholar search or link it to the Walden Library. And the link is good. It works most of the time. It can be a little glitchy, but in case you clear your browser of your cache and cookies, you have to reset the link to the Walden Library. And if you don't realize that you've lost the link for whatever reason, it can just add more time to your searching. And then to do the same search that we just did is difficult because you have to know how to set up the search properly in Google Scholar. So if you're interested in using Google Scholar, I highly recommend that you take our webinar on Google Scholar because it's 30 minutes of in-depth information that can make you much more proficient at using it. So if you're going to do that, I highly recommend doing something like that. Now, what I do want to focus on in Google Scholar is what we call citation chaining. Now, you can always look to the past of any article, right? You can always citation chain from the references of a journal article. So you can look at a journal article, look at its references, and you can see all the older literature that influenced that research, right? And I have a link up here on how to find an article by title in the library if you find something in an article reference list. But what Google Scholar does is it will tell you from the article that you have who has cited it since it's been published. So if you need something current from the last 3 to 5 years and your article's 10 years old, you can see who has cited it since then, and maybe you'll find other relevant information. So how might we do this? If we were interested in this might not, let's see if we can find an article that might be in there. These are pretty current. 2018, 2016. Okay, let's say that we found this article. It's from 2016. It's a little too old. We need something a little bit more recent. We can simply copy the article title, and we can go to Google Scholar, search the article title, and it will tell us since 2016 only 4 other articles have cited it, but they might be relevant. So if we click on Cited By, you can see these 4 articles. And you can look them up by title in the Walden Library, or if you have it linked, you can. Looks like none of these are available in the Walden Library. So these might be relevant. I am getting some feedback from students that my audio is, I've lost my audio. So if someone on the other end can tell me if they can still hear the audio, that would be great. Okay, so I think other students can hear me, so I am just going to recommend the student restart the webinar. So if you can just hold on for 1 second. Just going to respond to them. So that is how citation chaining works. But again, we also have some more information linked from the slide and some webinars that cover this information as well. So that is Google Scholar in a nutshell, but I, again, recommend certainly taking the Google Scholar webinar if that is something that you're interested in learning more about. So any other questions about Google Scholar? Okay. All right. So there are a few things to keep in mind about staying organized. So again, in advanced library research, you're either doing a much more in-depth project or you're trying to find something very specific. So all these tools are going to help. If you're doing in-depth research, one of the most important things is staying organized, especially for projects, capstones, and dissertation. And so what I would recommend as a minimum is using what we call a search log. Now, there's 2 different types of ways to track what you're doing with articles. The first, again, is a search log. It tracks searches. So where you searched, how you searched, and the results that you got. We're going to focus more on that. I'm not going to spend much time on the literature review matrix because if you take any of the Writing Center webinars, they talk much more about that because that tracks the articles that you find. That is a tool that allows you to compare methodology, theory, implications, recommendations for future research. But what we care about in the library is that you know where you've searched and what was the best searches for your topic. So what does a search log look like? Well, this is essentially it. It has 5 columns and you set it up in Excel. It's a simple Excel sheet. And so on the far left, you put the database title. So I could replicate all of these searches. I would go to PsycInfo and I would put in social support in the first search box, recidivism or reoffending in the second search box. They limited only to peer review and they had 164 results. Now, some of the observations that they made was that they found new keywords they didn't think to search: social network, social adjustment, institutional release, all concepts that they found in the database PsycInfo. So this is great, again, to keep track of what you searched and where you searched and what gave you the best results. So at a minimum, a search log is really essential. Now for capstone and dissertation students, well, particularly for dissertation students, we're going to talk here in a minute about how you can then further use the search log. Next is citation management software. Now, like Google Scholar, I don't spend much time on this because we have a webinar and a guide that is devoted specifically to citation management, and it will be incredibly helpful if you want to use it for you to spend the time to learn how to use it. So I recommend that you look at our overview webinar that will talk about what citation management does and what options you have. Then we have 2 separate webinars and guides for 2 free pieces of software called Zotero and Mendeley that we provide some intro support for. So citation management is simply what it says it is. It manages your citations. So it manages articles that you found and the citations associated with them. And it can be a really powerful organizational tool, but again, there is a bit of a learning curve. So if depending on your comfort with technology will depend on how quickly and comfortably you are able to learn the software. So that is just a little bit about citation management. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we literally could spend the whole hour just on citation management. Lastly, before we get to our how to find further help and support, you can also set up in our databases search alerts. Especially for our dissertation students, you can use search alerts for any of the database searches from your search log that you found to be particularly useful and relevant. There is a way in our databases to set up an alert where you can receive an email for any newly published information that was entered in the database, as well as any older information that we gained a subscription to. So maybe we had a subscription to a publication for the last 5 years, but we gained more content to say the last 10 or 15 years. You will get search alerts for all of that. And all of it can be particularly helpful. So keep in mind that that's also another option. And if you want to learn more about it, the links in the PowerPoint have that as well. Okay, so let's wrap up with how to get help. Unless I didn't pause for questions, so I can answer any questions that come up, or like I said, I'm able to spend a few more minutes after 8 o'clock to answer any residual questions as you all sort of reflect on the things that we talked about. Okay, so where can you learn more on your own? Where can you go in the library to find out more information? You don't particularly need specific help, but you want to learn more about citation management, or you want to learn more about Google Scholar. How can you do that? On the library homepage, there is this Get Help button, and that will be on the top of all of our web pages. So when you click here, you will see all upcoming webinars, but you will also see recorded webinars. So when you click on recorded webinars and you click on webinars on library skills, you will see all of what we call our mysteries series. So you can see all the options over here. So you can learn more about peer review. If you wanted to learn how to use Thoreau better, we have a webinar on that. I talked about Google Scholar. So you can take a 30-minute webinar and learn more specifically about just one specific tool or research strategy. You can also look at all of our psychology recorded webinars as well. So this is a great archive of all of our previous webinars that we hold live throughout the year. What else is also on the Get Help page is our library skills guides. And a lot of that is linked in the PowerPoint, but for instance, something that's not linked is our guide on choosing a topic. A lot of students struggle with this. So how do you choose a good topic? What if you can't find anything in the database? So some specific database research strategies. And how to work through assignments and discussions, as well as example topics and finding inspiration. So a lot of good guides in here that might help you. If you contact us at Ask a Librarian, we will often point you to these as well. So that is where you can find our recorded webinars and how-to guides. Now, where can you go to ask a question? Sometimes you just need to be able to ask a question. Well, there's lots of different ways to do that. You can use our quick answers, Ask a Librarian email or chat, or our doctoral research appointments. So they're kind of tiered. So quick answers is really a searchable FAQ. So we like you all a lot, but we don't like you enough to work at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you need to ask a question, but nobody is working. So where do you go to ask your question? Well, again, on the top menu of all of the library pages, there is this Ask a Librarian button, and that is where, actually, let me back up. Where can you ask a question when we are not working? So if you click on Search Everything at the top, you can then search what we call quick answers. So for instance, tonight we didn't cover what a DOI is. So I can type in DOI. I have a question about a DOI, so you can see what answers we have regarding a DOI. In the middle is our quick answers. So you'll see questions like, what is a DOI? How do I cite an article without a DOI? How do I cite an article with a DOI? So you will look and you will see a short answer to your question. And then of course, additional research as well, or I'm sorry, additional resources as well. So that's what you can do when it's 2 o'clock in the morning. For any other time that we might be working, you can use our Ask a Librarian, and that's where all of our other help lives. So you can see all of the options here at the top. So the first is you can email us. You fill out a short form. Now our response time is 24 hours, but honestly, we typically respond within a few hours. We staff Ask a Librarian 7 days a week. So if you're working on the weekends or in the evenings, we staff it throughout the week at different times. So depending on the time of the term, whether it's start term or 3 weeks in, it tends to get busy. We typically answer your question within a few hours. So certainly try this, but do not hold us to it if it takes us 24 hours, because that's the official government line here. That's what I'm supposed to be telling you. So 24 hours. So that is email. What I would first check, if you have a quick informational type question, is our chat hours. So for instance, we have chat available from 8 to 10 tonight, Eastern time. So everything student facing is always Eastern time. Now, you can't ask us how to do a literature review in chat because, well, A, we won't answer you, and B, if we did, you would probably be more frustrated than had you not asked, because chat's not really the place to do that. If you're trying to find a full text article, or you have a simple database search, you're trying to look for an article on a particular topic, we can help with those. But remember, any chat or texting that you do on the phone or with businesses online, it can become confusing, and so it's really best for sort of shorter informational type questions. So be aware that's how we use chat. You can leave us a voicemail, but we only respond to it via email. So look through your email for a response, but we do understand that some questions are just better asked verbally. And so you're welcome to do that, but make sure you check your email because we don't call students back. And then lastly, our doctoral research appointments. And those are available only to our doctorate students, so our doctoral students. And what that is a 30-minute appointment that you can focus specifically on your research needs and any specific questions that you have. And so to schedule a psychology appointment with me, you can go down to college, social and behavioral sciences, and psychology. Unfortunately, I don't have any, I have one appointment left for the rest of March. So it never hurts to check back. Sometimes students cancel and appointments open up, but we also have other research librarians that can help you when all of my appointments book up, and they're actually really great. And they can help you with anything that I would be able to help you with as well. So keep that in mind. Sometimes, like for instance, March for some reason is really busy for me. I will post my April hours mid-month. So if you are looking, you really do want to meet with me because you thought this webinar was fantastic and you think I would be an incredible help, then you can wait until mid-month and then my April appointments will open. So for dissertation students, you should be able to wait because it's a long process. And so there's lots of time to kind of schedule appointments in there. So that is the end of the webinar. I don't see any more questions, so I am going to thank everyone for coming and stop the recording. And like I said, I will stick around for a little bit longer for any residual questions that come in. But again, thank you, and hopefully I will see you all at an Ask a Librarian or in a doctoral appointment or possibly at residency as well. So thank you for coming, and happy researching.